Hello and welcome back. So in the last episode we created this little UMA fiddler script to show you the absolute basics of what you need to modify your UMA at runtime. A couple of things I don't really like about it. It's a bit static, and this in here where we're changing the head size, it's a one shot, quickly set a value. Great during gameplay, but if you want to make a character creator, attach this to a slider, it's a little bit limited. So what we're going to do, we're going to build a new script, a character creator script, based on what we've learned here, and do a few more things, such as change the race and mess around with sliders and bring some UI stuff in there. So as a starting point, very similar to usual, I have an UMA here. So if I run, there he is. Let's quickly look in the inspector, and you can see actually I want to make sure I set this to the human male DCS, but what you can see is I've put some male basic stuff on there. I've also put some female basic stuff on, so that if we switch over to a female, let's have the DCS version, there she is. She doesn't look too ridiculous, so we can swap backward and forward and they will always have some default outfits on. Okay, so let me quickly make sure I'm on human male DCS. Lovely. Right, so first of all, let's create ourselves a new script. Let's go in and say I want a C# script, and we'll call this character creator. Let's try not to put capitals where they shouldn't be. Character creator. There we are. Let's open this up and get rid of this junk here that we don't need. Fabulous. And first thing, let's have some using statements for the things we're going to use. So I'm going to start, obviously we're using UMA, and we're going to be using the character system as well. So UMA.character system. Great. And also we are going to be doing some UI stuff, so let's put our Unity engine.ui namespace in there as well. Okay, so we're ready to go. So this could be anywhere, it could be on any game object. Just for simplicity, I'm going to shove it on the character. So if I just save that real quick and go to our character, and let's put our character creator script on there. There we go. Right. So now we've got that, we can quite happily declare a public dynamic character avatar. Dynamic, it always hides the first time I look for it. There it is. Dynamic character avatar. Again, we'll call this avatar just like before. Rather than search for this, how I did in the previous script, in the start, you can see here I did a get component. I'm actually going to assign it in the inspector, so it's no big deal. It'll just make things a little bit tidier for me. So the big thing that I want to do here, I want to be able to change the race of my character, or the gender in this particular case. So let's write ourselves a little routine to do that. So let's have a public void, a public void, and we'll call this switch gender. There we go. And for this, I just want two buttons on the screen. One will send a true boolean if it's a male, and one will send a false boolean if it's a female. So we'll create a bool in here and call it male. Okay, so we can do some real simple stuff. We can say if let's say if male would be the simplest way forward. And we can say if male, in fact it's going to be a real short line, so we don't need those braces there. So if male, we're going to say avatar dot change race. Look at that, what a nice easy command, huh? Change race, and we're going to set this to human male DCS. Beautiful. Can you guess what the next one's going to be? I'm going to copy and paste that. I'm going to make a bit of space, and I'm going to say if not male, change this to, let's just modify this a little, human female DCS. and that should work. There's one other thing I just want to do, just a little bit of sort of null checky stuff. I'm going to check if the character is already male, so I don't want to be resetting the character if it is already male and I hit the male button. So I'm just going to put a condition in here, and this is a nice way where you can, anywhere in your script, you can read what gender or what race your character is. And the way we find that is we say avatar dot active race. There it is, yep, active race, and we need the name of that active race. And I'm going to say if that active race doesn't equal human male DCS, then go ahead and change it to human male DCS. So we're checking, do I want a male? Is the avatar already a male? If it isn't already a male, then go ahead and change. So I'm going to do the same thing in the female. Let's just copy and paste this chunk here, copy that. So I'm checking if we're not male and we're not already human. Let's change this to female DCS. Brilliant, and that should work fine. Okay, so obviously the next thing that we're going to need in here is we're going to need some UI buttons to fire off this switch gender code. So let's head over to our scene. Let's create a canvas. Okay, not parented to the character, thank you. We'll have that out in the wild. Let's just switch to 2D and press F on the keyboard to get the whole thing in the screen. Lovely. And let's quickly add a couple of buttons to that. So first we'll add UI button, and we'll ram this up at the top here. Ooh, didn't mean to resize that. Ram that over here, and it's a bit wide. Let's change that to an 80, and say I want that to stick to the top corner. Again, you can spend a lot of time, you can hook this up to whatever you want, but I'm going to stick in here this one. We're going to say is the male button. Superb. And we'll do the same. We'll duplicate that, and we'll just move it off to the side and snap it on. And let's name these properly. Button M, let's call that one, and this one can be button F. And quickly change the text so we can say female. Okay, so if you probably know this, but if you haven't done an awful lot with UI before, this is something that we're going to have a look at with UMA as well. But if we look in that button, you can see we have an on-click event that we can hook into. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to add an item to it. I'm going to connect our character to that on-click event. And in here, we're going to look for, there's our character creator and our switch gender routine that we made. This is the male button, so I'm going to say, yes, this is male. I'm going to do exactly the same on the female button. So, new item, drag our character over there. I'm going to say character creator, switch gender. This time I'm going to leave it false. Okay, so that's exactly what our routine's expecting. Do you know what? This just might work. Let's give it a whirl. So there's our character. If I hit female, it doesn't work. Quite simply because our avatar hasn't been set in our character creator. Hey, so let's drag that down. There we go. Hit run again. And bam, we now have buttons that change the sex of our character. Look at that. Easy as that. Brilliant. Now just before we move on here, I want to just examine our character. Let's collapse this dynamic character avatar for the moment, just so we can see the UMA data. And you can see here when I'm on the female, I have this UMA female DNA which lists all of the different sliders. If I switch to male, the DNA changes. Okay, so this is quite key. You saw in our UMA fiddler we grabbed a reference at the start, so we grabbed a reference to our DNA, and we only did it once. If we use this same technique and change character, our DNA will no longer be valid. So we need to do something here. We need to find when our character changes race, and we need to actually act upon that. Okay, so let's stop this and add a little bit more to our character creator script. So what I want to do is actually get hold of the UMA DNA, or create a holder for it. So let's create a private dictionary, and this one is going to contain, just like we had before, this is going to have a dynamic character. No, it's not. It's going to have a string, which is the actual name, and it is also going to have this DNA setter item in it. Okay, and we're going to call that DNA again because we're that imaginative. Okay, so we're now got a placeholder for it. And what we're going to do to make sure we get the DNA whenever our UMA changes is we're going to hook into one of our UMA events. Just like we saw with our GUI buttons, there was an on-click event. If we look at our character, and I drop down this character events area, there are several events that we can hook it into with UMA. Now again, we could do something here where we create a routine and we drag and drop it in. I'm actually going to do it the other way around. There's nothing stopping you doing what I did with the buttons, but I'm going to do it the other way around just to show how easy it is to hook in using delegates. So let's make a start. The thing with delegates, when I first came across them, I was quite confused and thought they were more complicated than they are. They're not. All an event is like an announcement, yeah? So if you were on a mailing list and you wanted to subscribe to a mailing list to say, I want to know when the latest release of UMA comes out, that's what you do with a delegate. You basically subscribe to one of these mailing lists and you get informed when that event occurs. It's really easy to do, but you've got to be a little bit careful with your subscription. So we have to do it on enable, and on disable we've got to unsubscribe from that mailing list. It's pretty easy. Let's just put this down. So I'm going to say void, and I'm going to use, this is a mono develop routine, this, so on enable. Okay, and in here we're going to say our avatar, I want to subscribe to this character updated. Now there's a few here. Character created gets fired once when the character is initially created. I don't want that. I want whenever the character is actually changed or modified in any way. So that's what I want to be informed about. So I'm going to say avatar character, and there they are. That's what I want. Character updated. I'm going to say add a listener. And for the moment I'm going to leave that blank because I haven't created a listener yet. So what I must always do when I've subscribed to a mailing list is to say void on disable. Okay, so this means when this component gets disabled, it's no longer on the mailing list. So I'm going to say avatar, and again it's a character updated. I'm going to say remove listener. Again, I'm going to leave that blank. So these two items add and remove an item to that mailing list. So let's create what we want to listen to that mailing list. Really, really simple method here. So I'm going to say void. I'm going to call this method updated. And this is the one I want to be called whenever that event happens. I'm going to create it like this. And I'm going to say inside, very, very simply, I want that to make my DNA equal to the avatar get DNA, which is exactly what we did last time, with Fiddler. It just means whenever we change our avatar, we're going to get a refresh of this update. Now, initially this won't work. If you watch, if I put this in here and I say, right, I want updated in there and updated in here. If we try and run this, let's just save and see what happens. I get an error. Okay, so it's telling me the parameters don't match. And the reason is this character updated event actually sends parameters out. Okay, so if we just have a little hunt around, you can see here, if I hover over that add listener, it shows a Unity action UMA data. So it's actually going to send out some UMA data. So all I need to do on here is say the parameter, let's say UMA data. We'll call that data. Now, even though we're not doing anything with that, it's not it being used at all in here, we still have to have it in that method so that the character updated can pass that across. So if I save now, we shouldn't get any errors. So all I've done, subscribe to the mailing list for character updated and unsubscribed when I'm disabled. Okay, and this is what I want to fire off. If we run, we're not going to see anything. All that's happening is this private dictionary is going to get updated. Okay, but now we know when we swap from male to female, we will always have the most up-to-date list of DNA. So, delegates, who knew they were so simple? Again, you can do it the other way around. You can attach things in the inspector, but I think this method is really useful because it gives you a bit more flexibility at runtime with dynamically instantiated items. I like it so much that the next part, where we're going to put some sliders on to alter our DNA, I'm going to attach them this way as well, rather than the way we did with the buttons. Okay, so let's create ourselves a slider. I think first thing, let's go back to our UI and onto our canvas, and let's create, let's have a little look. UI slider. That could be much easier, could it? Let's drag that over here. Yeah, I'm just going to move it there, snap it onto that side, and I'm going to create well, actually, let's name this. So this is slider. Let's call this slider height. So our first one is probably the most basic bit of DNA we can alter, which is the height. Let's also add a piece of text so that the user knows that. Again, where are we? Let's pop that over here. Snap that on. There we go. And we'll change our text. Again, let's just fiddle about with that. And we'll say height. And while I'm on, let's make two of these. Let's do more than one, just to show how it all works. So I'm going to copy both of those, duplicate them, and just move them down. Again, let's just snap these on so that they all look nice and neat, and just change these as well. So instead of height there, what shall we have? Let's go for belly. Why not? Just for a change, let's change belly. We'll say this one's called text belly. Okay, and that can be slider belly. Okay, so two sliders. Again, you can create as many as you like. You can alter them as much as you like, but that'll just get us going. So let's go back into our character creator, and let's create a reference to these so we can add them in the inspector. So I'm going to have a public slider, and we'll call this height slider, and we'll do another one, public slider, and we'll call this belly slider. Again, I always do that with capitals, but you didn't notice, did you? Again, let's hit save. Let's just assign those two in our character. So if we get over to our character, there we can see the height slider and the belly slider. Let's pop them on. So height slider, belly slider. So that's all hooked up and ready to go. So in here, I'm actually going to hook in, if we look at our sliders, hook into this onValueChanged event. So in our script here, just the same as with our avatar, I'm going to say height slider, and the event is called onValueChanged. So there it is, onValueChanged. We're going to add a listener, and again, we don't know, we haven't created it yet, but we'll leave that there. We'll do the same again, but for our belly slider, let's pop in there, belly slider, lovely. And down here on disable, we'll do the remove function. So again, height slider, onValueChanged, remove listener, again, we don't know yet. And I'll cut and paste that over to here and change that one to belly slider. So we're now fully hooked into that. We just need to write a routine that actually listens to that. And you can see when I save, it's throwing errors because I haven't actually supplied a listener. So let's pop one in there. Let's put two in actually. So we'll put a public void head size change. Do you think? Why not? Good name as any. There we go in the capitals. Head size change. And again, we're going to do what we did in our UMA Fiddler script. So I'm going to say DNA, and I'm going to pick the index of height. In fact, why have I said head size change? Crazy. That's height change, isn't it? There we go, height change. So DNA height dot set, and again, now remember what happened last time when we had this updated. It had to have a field where it was actually taking that data in. The listener, so on value change, will actually send a value across. It'll send a float. So again, you can find that out just by hovering over. You can see their Unity event float. So in here we need to have a float created as an input. So float, and we'll call this val. Why not? And we'll say set val. There we go. And of course, whenever I do anything and I want to update my avatar, we've got to call avatar build character, like that. Okay, this looks good. So I can now hook this one up. So in here I'm going to insert the name of my routine. Notice how I don't have the braces afterwards. Yeah, just part of how you call things with delegates. I'm going to copy this and do this one exactly the same for the belly. Okay, and we'll call this belly change. Why not? Belly change, and again let's change this for belly. Okay, that should be good to go. But of course I need to add my belly change into the listener and remove it from the listener. Let's hit save, and once it's compiled, my errors go away. So if this is right, fingers crossed, if I run this, what we should have now is a character that we can change the race of, and we can also change the height of, and the belly size. Look at that. One thing that I don't like about this, which you might have noticed, let's just run that again. Generally all UMA sizes begin at 0.5, but our sliders are defaulting to 0. And again, if I click on it, as soon as I click on it, you can see we go to the bottom. Now we could, in our definition up here, we could sit in here, we could initialize it to 0.5, but that's possibly not always the best way to do these things. So what I'm going to do is, during this updated method, so whenever our UMA actually gets updated or created, I'm going to read the DNA and set my slider to that value. So let's do that. Let's say height slider value. So the height slider, not height slider val, what am I playing about now? Height slider value equals and let's say DNA again height, and we'll say get. Really straightforward. I'm going to do exactly the same for the belly. So let's grab that code, copy it, paste it, change this to belly slider, and change the DNA name to belly. So what we should get now is, if I run my two sliders, and you saw them jump there, pick up the DNA values from that actual character, and you can see belly changing and height changing. Again, if I switch over to the female, these should reset. Again, that's our updated routine firing, and again, there we are. We can mess around with those sliders at will. Okay, so I know that was a bit code heavy, but I think what we learned, it's not a particularly long piece of code. We learned how to hook up using delegates, which is really easy, how to switch genders, how to make sure that we keep in sync with our UMA data or our UMA DNA, and how to use the UI to adjust our characters at runtime. So I hope you find that helpful, and I will see you next time. So I'd just like to say a big thank you to all of my patrons. These are the people who made this video possible. And if you'd like to support me, please click the link that appears at the end of this video. I'll see you next time.